Life has a funny way of throwing challenges our way. The world is far from perfect, and unpleasantries seem to pop up at every turn. We are dealing with issues like war, famine, pollution, violence, and, for those who feel strongly about it, even the divisive debate about pineapple on pizza. The list of problems is almost endless. Yet when we pause for a moment and take a step back, it is hard not to notice how in many ways, life has actually never been better for humanity. We now enjoy luxuries and conveniences that were unimaginable just a few centuries ago. However, as much as we have progressed, the further back in time you go, the harsher and more unforgiving life seems to have been for people. The struggles were tougher, the environment was often brutal, and resources were far scarcer. This was not just true for us, but also for other hominin species that shared the planet in those ancient days. The Ice Age, in particular, stands out as one of the most challenging periods in human history. It was a time of biting cold, relentless scarcity, and constant danger. Perhaps it was this incredibly harsh environment that forged some of the most resilient and physically formidable beings to have ever walked the earth, like the Neanderthals. The Neanderthals were a product of their time, and their biology reflected the extreme conditions they faced. Their bodies were built for survival, with traits that might even seem superhuman by today's standards. They were robust, strong, and perfectly adapted to endure the Ice Age's punishing landscape. These unique characteristics are a big part of why they have captured our imagination, and why they are still considered icons of that era. However, while much attention has been given to the Neanderthals and their impressive biology, there is another group of humans from the Ice Age that often gets overlooked. These individuals were extraordinary in their own right. They not only endured the Ice Age, but also coexisted with the Neanderthals. The most fascinating part? They were not some lost or mysterious species that went unnoticed in the annals of history. In fact, the group I am referring to is connected to us directly. I am talking about the Cro-Magnon people, a population of early humans who are believed to have been the first anatomically modern humans to settle in Europe. Their arrival in this challenging environment has been dated to approximately 56,800 years ago, during the latter part of the Pleistocene epoch. Our understanding of the Cro-Magnon people began in 1868, thanks to a remarkable discovery in France. Scientists uncovered human remains in a cave that was later named Cro-Magnon. Among the artifacts found were skulls and other skeletal remains, which sparked intense scientific interest. At the time, researchers initially believed they had stumbled upon an entirely new species of human. There were clear anatomical differences that set these remains apart. However, the similarities between the Cro-Magnon skeletons and modern humans could not be ignored. These findings eventually led scientists to conclude that Cro-Magnons were not a separate species, but rather an early form of Homo sapiens, our direct ancestors. Today, these individuals are often referred to as European Early Modern Humans, or EEMH for short. This classification stems from their distinct yet familiar anatomy. They possessed a globular brain case, an upright posture, a flat and modern-looking face, a delicate brow ridge, and a pronounced chin. If that description sounds familiar, it is because all of these traits are still present in modern humans today. In fact, if you were to encounter a Cro-Magnon in Ice Age Europe, you might find it surprisingly easy to recognize them as one of us. In stark contrast, a Neanderthal's physical differences, such as their heavy brows and stocky build, might stand out much more. The skeletal evidence also tells us just how closely related they are to us. Their bones share a remarkable resemblance to those of present-day humans, further proving that they were part of our evolutionary story. Their survival and eventual success in such a harsh climate speak volumes about their adaptability and ingenuity. But what was life really like for them? And how did they manage to thrive alongside the Neanderthals in such a perilous time? To truly understand their story, we need to dig deeper into their culture, biology, and the fascinating dynamic between these two Ice Age powerhouses. Even though the Cro-Magnons shared many similarities with us, there is no denying that you would have noticed a few striking differences if you encountered one in person. For starters, these were not people you would ever want to provoke or challenge. Their physiques alone would have made that abundantly clear. Cro-Magnons were built like something straight out of an action movie, strong, durable, and physically imposing. It is no wonder that early researchers initially mistook them for an entirely separate species of humans. The earliest known Cro-Magnons, in particular, had some striking physical traits that set them apart. One of the most noticeable was their size. In many ways, they were giants for their time. Fossil evidence from adult specimens shows that, on average, They were comparable in height to modern post-industrial humans, which is impressive when you consider that people today are generally taller than ever in history. Cro-Magnon females averaged about 5 feet 4 inches, roughly 1.63 meters, in height, while the males typically stood over 5 feet 9 inches, around 1.75 meters. This already made them taller than the average adult human today. But that was just the baseline. There were even more remarkable subsets of Cro-Magnons who pushed the limits of human stature for their era. Populations from Eastern Europe, for instance, stood out for their exceptional height, with individuals ranging from 5 feet 10 inches, 1.78 meters, to a towering 6 feet 2 inches, 1.88 meters. If this population were treated as a modern country, they would rank as the tallest on Earth. And there were outliers who were even larger. Some male specimens have been discovered standing at 6 feet 3 inches, 1.91 meters, making them taller than the average professional American football player today. It is not just their height that made them remarkable, though. Their overall build was equally impressive. While their skeletal structure was similar to ours in terms of shape, Cro-Magnons were far more robust. Their bones were noticeably larger, broader, and denser, providing them with exceptional strength and resilience. This was evident across their entire skeletal system, but their lower limbs and shoulders were particularly notable for their size and durability. For example, the collarbones of a medium-sized Cro-Magnon could measure up to 19 centimeters, 7.5 inches long, which is about 25% longer than the average human collarbone today. This added length gave them enhanced leverage for shoulder movements, allowing for incredibly powerful swings, an invaluable trait for wielding melee weapons in a time when survival often depended on strength and combat skills. Their massive frames also suggest that they were extremely muscular. Studies comparing the bodies of Cro-Magnons to modern humans of the same height show that the former would have been about 20% heavier, with much of that extra weight coming from lean muscle. This meant that they were not just tall, they were incredibly strong and physically capable, with bodies designed to handle the relentless challenges of Ice Age Europe. And those challenges were no joke. Life during that time was a constant struggle for survival, and only the toughest could endure. Cro-Magnons lived in a world where every day presented new threats, from fierce predators to unforgiving weather. Their sheer muscle mass and bone strength were not overkill. They were absolutely necessary. Fossil evidence reveals that these individuals frequently sustained severe injuries, from broken bones to deep wounds, yet many of them survived and healed. This speaks to not only their physical resilience but also their ability to endure unimaginable hardships. It was this combination of size, strength, and sheer toughness that allowed the Cro-Magnons to thrive in such a brutal environment. But these physical traits were only part of the story. To truly understand how they managed to not just survive but succeed in the Ice Age, we need to explore their culture, tools, and ingenuity, which played just as important a role in their rise to prominence. For instance, within the Cro-Magnon rock shelter alone, researchers uncovered multiple specimens that bore clear evidence of enduring painful infections during their lifetimes. Even more striking, many, if not the majority of these individuals, had fused vertebrae in their necks, a condition believed to have resulted from traumatic injuries sustained during their harsh lives. One of the most remarkable finds was that of an adult female who had suffered a severe skull fracture at some point in her life. Despite the seriousness of the injury, she managed to survive for a significant period afterward, as the fracture exhibited signs of bone healing. And if you thought that was hard to fathom, the first Cro-Magnon ever discovered, famously known as Cro-Magnon 1, provides an even more compelling example of the hardships they faced. This individual endured a life that was nothing short of grueling. His skull and face were riddled with scars, which researchers believe were caused by a genetic condition that led to the development of multiple cysts and tumors. Yet despite these challenges, Cro-Magnon 1 reached adulthood, an impressive feat, considering the harsh conditions of the Ice Age. In fact, he was considered relatively old by the standards of his time at the moment of his death. Now, before you think of him as an elder in the modern sense, it is important to note that age back then was not exactly what we imagine today. The life expectancy of a Cro-Magnon was typically under 40 years, a figure comparable to that of their contemporaries, the Neanderthals, who were also known for living extremely challenging lives. For both groups, early death was simply a grim reality of the Ice Age, a time when survival was as brutal as the frozen landscapes themselves. but having a strong, robust build did more than just help Cro-Magnons endure injuries and illness. Their powerful physiques also equipped them to navigate the treacherous terrains of Ice Age Europe, and perhaps more importantly, to hunt massive prey with incredible efficiency. Evidence from the bones of animals they hunted reveals that Cro-Magnons primarily targeted large megafaunal creatures such as horses, reindeer, bison, aurochs, ibex, and even the legendary woolly mammoth. Yes, woolly mammoths, the colossal giants of the Ice Age, were among their prey. The proof of their remarkable hunting skills is not just theoretical. Scientists have uncovered frozen carcasses of animals with clear evidence of both pre- and post-mortem injuries caused by human activity. This suggests that Cro-Magnons were not just capable hunters, they were apex predators in their own right. They even targeted some of the top predators of the era, including Ice Age hyenas, various feline species, and bears. The tools of their trade often included expertly crafted stone and bone spears, which were used with deadly precision to bring down these formidable animals. What is even more fascinating is the patterns seen among their prey. Many of the species they hunted are now extinct. Some, like hyenas, are extinct in certain regions, while others, such as woolly mammoths and aurochs, are entirely gone. Unfortunately, these extinctions were not random. Early humans, including Cro-Magnons, are believed to have played a significant role in driving these animals to extinction. And while it might be easy to dismiss this as a distant relic of the past, it is a sobering reminder of a trend that continues today. Currently, nearly 48% of all species worldwide are experiencing declining populations, and 28% are considered threatened with extinction. While our fascination with extinct animals is endless, the lessons they leave behind are too important to ignore. That is why it is more critical than ever to support conservation efforts. On that note, I am excited to share that we are teaming up once again with Planet Wild, an incredible organization dedicated to nature conservation. Planet Wild operates through a crowdfunding model, offering a paid membership that allows funds to be directed toward a new conservation project partner every month. By supporting Planet Wild, you are actively contributing to the protection of the natural world, ensuring that future generations can continue to marvel at the beauty of our planet's wildlife. These incredible conservation projects take place all around the globe, but one that really captured my attention recently is right here in the United States, in the vast landscapes of Montana. You might not be aware of this, but North America was once home to sprawling grasslands that covered an area of roughly 240 million acres. To put that into perspective, that is nearly the combined size of Texas and California. Absolutely massive. Unfortunately, over time, much of this natural wonder has been lost. Large portions of these grasslands were destroyed to make way for cattle farms, drastically altering the ecosystems that once thrived there. But here is where Planet Wild steps in. Through an inspiring partnership with the organization American Prairie, they are working to bring these lands back to life. Together, they are purchasing old cattle ranches and carefully transforming them back into their original natural state. This effort not only restores the land, but also provides a crucial safe haven for many endangered native species that depend on these grasslands for survival. And this is just one example of the many impactful projects you can support. Every month, Planet Wild collaborates with new organizations to tackle conservation challenges worldwide. What I love about them is their complete transparency. They show exactly how the funds are used by releasing monthly YouTube videos that detail the progress made, giving you an inside look at how the community's contributions are directly making a difference. I have personally been a proud member for a while now, and I genuinely think it is one of the best ways for individuals like you and me to get involved in meaningful conservation work. You do not need to be a billionaire or part of a massive organization to make an impact. Every single dollar truly counts. And to make it even easier to get started, I am covering the first month for the first 150 people who sign up. So, if you feel inspired to take action and protect our natural world, all you have to do is scan the QR code on the screen. Use my code EXTINCTY1 or click the link in the description or pinned comment. Whether you can give a little or a lot, your contribution matters. Together, we can ensure that future generations inherit a planet filled with thriving ecosystems and diverse wildlife. But let us take a moment to reflect on the tools and techniques that made early humans like the Cro-Magnons so effective in their environments. While spears were undoubtedly their weapon of choice, their ingenuity went far beyond that. These early innovators developed a variety of ranged and melee weapons, each designed with incredible attention to detail. This arsenal included spear, throwers, javelins, clubs, blades, nets, boomerangs, and perhaps even primitive bows. Each weapon often came in multiple specialized forms, some with uniquely shaped points for specific tasks, others with tailored grips for better handling. Their resourcefulness and craftsmanship were truly remarkable. However, the strength and weaponry of the Cro-Magnons were not always directed at animals. Sadly, just like modern humans, they were also capable of turning their aggression toward one another. Evidence suggests that prehistoric violence and even murder were not uncommon. Remember the skull fracture I mentioned earlier? Well, it turns out that head injuries, often consistent with human-made attacks, were shockingly frequent in this period. One of the most chilling examples comes from Cro-Magnon II, a male specimen who lived over 30,000 years ago. This individual suffered a devastating injury to the front of his face, believed to have been caused by a slow but incredibly forceful blunt weapon. The blow was not immediately fatal, but it inflicted immense damage, ultimately sealing his fate. Before his death, he endured symptoms consistent with intracranial hemorrhaging and brain hematomas, an unimaginably painful way to go. Unfortunately, his case is not unique. Other skulls from the era show similar signs of crushing injuries, offering grim insights into the darker side of human history. The head seems to have been a preferred target for attackers during these times, as evidenced by the injuries found on many ancient skulls. But lethal blows were not always directed at the skull. Sometimes, the violence was even more precise and brutal. Take, for instance, the case of Sungir I, a specimen discovered with a deep, fatal cut to the thoracic vertebrae. This injury would have severed critical blood vessels, immediately cutting off circulation to the brain and causing death in mere moments. It is grim to imagine, but such violence may have been a reflection of the extreme hardships of the Ice Age. Survival was no small feat during this era. Encounters between groups could easily escalate into deadly conflicts over resources that were critical for life, land, food, and even societal privileges such as mating rights. In an environment where every resource was a lifeline, it is not hard to see how desperation could lead to conflict. And while it may be difficult to picture ourselves in these scenarios, I am sure some of you can relate to arguments over food, although those are usually much less dramatic. For Cro-Magnons, however, the situation was far more dire, and, disturbingly, some evidence suggests that food fights back then may have taken on a much darker meaning. There are hints that victims of violence were not just left for dead, but may have been turned into food themselves. This unsettling possibility is supported by discoveries from Gough's Cave in England, which date back approximately 15,000 years. Among the remains found there were human skull caps that had been carefully shaped and polished, leading researchers to believe they were used as drinking vessels or eating bowls. But the story gets even darker. In the same cave, archaeologists uncovered gruesome evidence that human bodies had been systematically butchered. Fossilized remains show that soft tissues, muscles, tendons, and organs had been meticulously removed with stone knives. Bones were cracked open, likely to extract the nutrient-rich marrow hidden within. And if that was not disturbing enough, among the 3 apparent victims, 2 were very young individuals. This paints a grim picture of survival in the Ice Age, where even children were not spared from the harsh realities of life and death. Sadly, it seems that the capacity to misuse power and strength is not a new phenomenon. Much like today, our ancient ancestors sometimes used their abilities in ways that were anything but noble. And this inclination toward violence extended not only to members of their own species, but also to their closest relatives, the Neanderthals. The relationship between Neanderthals and Cro-Magnons has always been a subject of intense curiosity. These two groups coexisted in Europe for thousands of years, sharing the landscape and at times likely competing for resources. However, the Neanderthals eventually disappeared, and while there are many theories about their extinction, some researchers believe that violent encounters with Cro-Magnons may have played a role. One compelling piece of evidence is a 50,000-year-old cold case involving a Neanderthal male. His skeleton was found with a significant rib injury caused by a stone point weapon. The wound was fatal, and based on its angle and the relatively low kinetic energy required to inflict it, researchers hypothesized that the injury was caused by a ranged weapon, like a spear or dart. This detail is particularly noteworthy because Neanderthals were not known to use ranged weapons. Cro-Magnons, on the other hand, had developed sophisticated projectile tools, giving them a distinct advantage in long-range combat. This technological edge would have allowed them to strike from a distance, minimizing their own risk while delivering lethal blows to their adversaries. The unfortunate Neanderthal in this case appears to have been one of the victims of this innovation, highlighting how advancements in weaponry may have played a role in the decline of the Neanderthals. It is a chilling reminder that while Cro-Magnons were undoubtedly innovative and resourceful, their superior tools and tactics were not always used for peaceful purposes. Their ability to adapt and innovate might have made them survivors, but it also marked the beginning of a long and complicated history of human conflict. Additionally, there is evidence that suggests Neanderthals might not only have been competitors or occasional allies of Cro-Magnons, but possibly victims in another, much darker way. A recovered Neanderthal jawbone was found to bear cut marks that are strikingly similar to those seen on the remains of butchered deer, processed by Cro-Magnons. The cuts on the jawbone suggest a technique nearly identical to what ancient humans used to prepare animal carcasses for consumption. This discovery has led researchers to hypothesize that this Neanderthal may have been eaten by modern humans. Now, I want to emphasize that this theory is far from conclusive. The jawbone could have served another purpose, such as being used as a trophy or tool, rather than being consumed. Additionally, while the cut marks are undeniably human-like, they do not provide definitive proof that the Neanderthal was killed by Cro-Magnons. It is also possible that this individual had already died from other causes before their remains were processed. What we do know for certain is that, while there were undoubtedly violent encounters between Cro-Magnons and Neanderthals, their interactions were not exclusively hostile. In fact, genetic evidence suggests that the two groups shared a more complex and nuanced relationship. There are clear signs of interbreeding between them, which resulted in modern humans carrying small traces of Neanderthal DNA even today. Interestingly, it seems that it was the earlier Cro-Magnons who had the closest relationships with Neanderthals. One remarkable example is the 40,000-year-old specimen known as OASE-1. This individual's genome shows that they were approximately 9% Neanderthal, indicating that one of their Neanderthal ancestors lived as recently as 4 generations prior, essentially making their great-great-grandparent a Neanderthal. This high percentage of Neanderthal DNA in early Cro-Magnons has sparked fascinating speculation about what these individuals might have looked like. Based on fossil evidence, it appears that some of the earliest Cro-Magnons had physical traits that were slightly reminiscent of their Neanderthal ancestors. For example, older Cro-Magnon skulls often had somewhat flattened skull caps and prominent occipital buns, a feature that causes the back of the skull to protrude, much like what is seen in Neanderthals. Over time, however, these Neanderthal-like features gradually faded away, as did the proportion of Neanderthal genes in Cro-Magnon populations. Simultaneously, other defining characteristics of Cro-Magnons, such as their extreme physical robustness, also began to diminish. This shift is believed to be connected to the last glacial maximum, a period of intense cold that caused widespread habitat loss and placed tremendous pressure on Cro-Magnon communities. Adapting to these challenges likely reshaped both their physical traits and their way of life. That said, Cro-Magnons retained some distinct features that set them apart. Their jaws and skulls were still relatively large and sturdy compared to modern humans. These robust skulls housed correspondingly large teeth, which were well suited for processing their diet. And what a diet it was, primarily consisting of meat from large game, but also including tough foods such as hard nuts, seeds, and fibrous roots. Their teeth were not just tools for eating, but essential for survival in a harsh and unforgiving environment. However, the most fascinating feature of their skulls was not their size or durability, but what they contained. Cro-Magnons had exceptionally large brains, bigger, in fact, than the average brain size of modern humans. Their brain cases measured around 1,514 cubic centimeters on average, compared to today's average of 1,350 cubic centimeters. What accounted for this significant difference? Most of it came from their enlarged occipital and frontal lobes. The occipital lobe, located at the back of the brain, is critical for visual processing, while the frontal lobe, situated in the front, is responsible for higher-level functions such as decision-making, problem-solving, and social behavior. In Cro-Magnons, these areas were significantly larger than in modern humans, suggesting that their brains were wired for complex tasks. Despite this, we still know very little about how their larger brain size translated to cognition or behavior. Did they think in ways fundamentally different from us? Were their social structures and problem-solving strategies more advanced? or simply adapted to the unique challenges of their time? While these questions remain unanswered, one thing is clear. Cro-Magnons were at least as intelligent as modern humans, and their intellectual capabilities were likely a key factor in their survival and eventual dominance. Their story is a testament to the resilience, adaptability, and ingenuity of our ancient ancestors. And while the Cro-Magnons were not without their flaws, evident in their capacity for violence, they were also remarkable in their ability to overcome the challenges of a world that would seem almost uninhabitable to us today.